Hi, welcome to another Canto RoboFlow training movie. In this training movie, we are going to talk about the release of 10.2.3. I will be showing you some bug fixes and also some new features or functionalities. So it's not just interesting to know what is in this version, but these functionalities, of course, will be available for any upcoming versions. The very first question you often get is, what version of RoboFlow am I using? Well, any application, any part of RoboFlow or of Cumulus always has a version.txt, and this tells you what your installer was. But RoboFlow in its interface itself also gives you under show log, if you go to version info, a detailed description of all the fixes. You can see this is from release 10.2 and all these fixes are in here. So the previous release of RoboFlow was 10.2.1, so all these fixes are actually in your new version of RoboFlow. Some of them are actions or functions, others are more layout modifications or improvements. The very first one I want to talk about is the logging. You have from inside your workflow access to your log files, and these log files by default in Cumulus go to your log folder. Here are, for all the workflows you use, your log folders. However, you also have a logs folder, which is just the wrapper conf, which is the part of the tool that launches RoboFlow as a service. This wrapper log can also be put somewhere else if you specify that in the wrapper log conf in this folder. But the RoboFlow folder, log folder, this one can also be changed. All you need to do is, in your version 10.2.3 or more recent, go to roboflow.xml. Of course, you need to stop your RoboFlow service before. And if you go in here, you will notice that you now have a new section in here, which is called, or a new tag in here, which is called log folder. And in this tag, you can just specify where you want your log files to be stored. It's that simple. That is one new functionality, and you will see, if you have that specified, that suddenly your log files are no longer under the log folder of your RoboFlow application, but now in that newly specified folder. In regards to logs, if logging is just set to normal logging, it will log a log file per workflow, in which you will find all the necessary information. There is an overall log file that gives you maybe sometimes additional information, but which is maybe less important or less known or used. The information of what's happening in your workflow is traditionally in these files. If you enable debug logging, you can see that there will be additional files appearing here with the same name but an extension. Each of them contain specific logging information which could help you debug a problem. So this is one new feature in this release, is the fact that you can change the log folder. Interface-wise, a new feature as well is now that you can have carriage returns in this logging. In the past, it would translate the carriage returns you typed in into dashes, but now that is no longer the case. So now you can type in a carriage return, and be careful, not just carriage return. What you need to do is shift return, and then you can have more information. I would suggest or recommend to anybody who is creating workflows to use this comment field to give some more information about the workflow, because it's very important when 6 months later you come back to this workflow that you understand what this workflow is actually doing. Another nice functionality is now also that the help field also contains the folder where this workflow resides. All the workflows by default go under the workflows folder in the installation folder, and they take the name of the workflow. But if you change the name of the workflow, it does not change the file, the folder. So for instance, this one was a workflow that was imported, was not created in this instance, but imported from somewhere else. And then it goes into import and then into the date time folder, and at that point in the name of the workflow from where it was created. You can change it as much as you like. It does not influence your location where your file is stored, but it can be useful to have this location anyway. Another functionality that has been added is the fact that, or actually somewhere between added and fixed, is the fact that you can, if I go here, for instance, doesn't matter which one, those of you who've worked with RoboFlow before know if you type a hash, wait a 1 or 2 seconds and then type a hash again, you get a drop down with the names of the stored tags, stored results, output variables, that it knows of the same, of the type string. So that has always been there. What is changed in this version, that you very commonly would use tag to get to those variables, and if you want to get to another one which is not in the list, because maybe you added it manually to the parameters, then you can just select tag and type in the parameter that you want to use, because the parameters that you get here are only the parameters that it knows from the template of this workflow and the ones that you create in this script. It doesn't see parameters from other scripts or from other parts of the workflow, only the ones in this. So that's something that makes it a little bit easier. There is also a bug fix in here in regards to date format. In the syntax, by accident, there was a mixture of semicolons and colons separating the elements in a date format instruction, which made it fail. And we will see that a little bit later on, but so this too is fixed. And additionally, when you opened the client, the workflow editor, you sometimes had unwanted scroll bars here. So these scroll bars have also now been removed, so they no longer bother you. And there will also, you have here the ability to resize, you have the ability to drag it. So if you work on a very big screen, it now goes much further. You can make it much bigger than you used to. So that too is an improved functionality. So this was basically pointing to the interface. The last interface change is that it now points you to new Canto help. In the past, when you clicked here, it was using internal RoboFlow help files, and now since every part of Cumulus has centralized their logging, the help is now available under the Canto help, which means that you now can, from each part in the workflow, get directly to the right page to the right help page. So this is now what is new in terms of interface. If we turn our attention now to bug fixes or functionality fixes or new functionalities, then the one here at the top of the list is SFTP. In the past, there was a lot of problems when trying to use SFTP, because some of the FTP servers were using host keys, and the latest version required the host key to be accepted, which meant that it failed. You could not do FTP connections. So now you do have the ability to use FTP in these SFTP with host keys. Let me show you how that works. This is a workflow called Folder Synchronized with FTP, which is a workflow that in every loop will connect to an FTP server, and in that FTP server then it will try to synchronize depending on the parameters. So you can see that we have SFTP configured, that we have here files, FTP files to local, which means it will download the remote files to the local folder. This is then the local folder, and it will do nothing with slave files, which means any files that are here and not remotely will not be deleted. If you say that they should be deleted, then it will delete them. Because we're doing FTP files to local, it will download any files and then delete them. So what I am going to do, I'm going to, for this example, just switch them. Oh, sorry. And because it doesn't mention hot folder, if it mentions hot folder, it will delete them. Otherwise, it's synchronization. So sorry for the confusion. If you choose for the hot folder version, it deletes after download or upload. Because this one does not, it will just download and synchronize, but it will not delete the other side when it's finished. So let's have a look and let's run this workflow. But before going there, notice that you have here the FTP protocol, which is SFTP. It can be FTP passive, FTP, FTP SSL, FTP TLS, and also the SFTP that we specified here. You need to specify the port number. Now you have also the ability to use some upload actions. In those actions, you don't get an option to specify the port separately. So in that case, you can just add the port here to the URL. After the URL, you just say colon and then 22. Notice that there's something special here at the end. What is so special is that there is a fingerprint here, or a host key, an RSA host key. That means that on the other side there's a host key defined, and this host key will be accepted by RoboFlow. This only works with 10.2.3 or more recent. I just quickly want to show you how you can get that fingerprint. So if you use a tool like WinSCP, which is very easy to find and to install, you can just type in your credentials, and then it will return you the SSH RSA key, the fingerprint, the RSA2 fingerprint that you need. You could also, if you're on a Mac or on Linux, you could just also command line execute this, and you would also get the fingerprint. Be careful to check that you are getting the RSA key and nothing else, because if, for instance, you're trying it with FileZilla, it will return you a different type of key, and so the wrong fingerprint. But it's easy enough, or you could just ask the person who's providing you with access to provide you with the RSA2 fingerprint host key. So if I start to run this, it will connect and it will look and compare the files and then decide which ones it needs to download and which ones it needs to update. And so you can see that it is automatically synchronizing with an SFTP site. Staying on the internet, the next thing that has been fixed / expanded is call external URL. In the past you could already call an external URL, but it was limited to a GET request. So since this latest version, you can do a GET request, a normal request URL, or you can do a GET request with normal parameters, which is just a normal call. But you could also add this to the parameters in front of the parameters, which would make it, instead of a GET, it will change it into a post, and it will post this URL. You can also use HTTPS, both with post with parameters, and also if you want, for instance, to communicate with zip, you can also use JSON. If you want to add JSON parameters, you just specify the question mark and you specify here the parameters in between curly brackets, and specify the parameter equals whatever value. If it's a numerical value, then the value is not between quotes. If it's not a numerical value, then it's in between quotes. If there's multiple parameters, you just separate them by commas. So the workflow can execute this and it can store the result. So there is an action called call URL save file, and you just specify the file path. That's how this works. Now, when specifying the file path, if you know what format you will receive, it's a smart thing to add, of course, the file extension, so that also on your file system you recognize what file it is. But let me run this as an example. What I did is I added a little extra functionality to this workflow. This workflow is actually looking into this folder. It is only picking up TXT files, and it is actually, at this point it contains this folder in which I specified the URLs to call. So this workflow starts by saying process text lines from file, which is a pretty recent new action in RoboFlow. I think it was introduced in 10.2, where instead of first having to have a file object, then pick up the file content read it into an internal table or internal text block, you can now immediately process line by line. The advantage is if you have huge text files of, let's say, 100 megabyte, then you don't have to first read it into memory and then process it from memory, which would explode the memory usage of RoboFlow. So that action then performs each line having a carriage return, line feed, or either, and it will store each line with line to process, and in light of that, it will test if the line is not empty. It will add an entry line into the log, and then it will execute the log. It will execute. So this instruction, or a similar one, which is just call URL, is very often used to test the availability of your website. So you can make a workflow that calls maybe every minute your sites or your portal site or zip, and just to see what the response time is. And so you could work with that. But this one is just storing the result in a file in the hot folder download, and it calls it download. So the hot folder, this is the hot folder here. So I'm going to execute that workflow. And if now I'm going to have a look into my drop folder here, and to my drop folder, where is it? Here. You see that at this moment 2 files came in, one of 15 gigabytes and one of 30. I know that this one is a JPEG. As I said, if you know what you're picking up, you should, in the workflow itself, change the extension or add the extension so that you know what you're getting. But you can see here that this was a simple JPEG that it downloaded just a few seconds ago. And let's see if this file was finished. It was. We know that this was a WAR file, which is, as we know, nothing else but a zip. So this was actually, we were actually picking up here our version of Portals, I think. No, it's not Portals, it is actually zip. So you see this functionality already existed, but now it also accepts post calls instead of just get, and also JSON instead of just get. Another fix which I mentioned briefly before is that when in the past you had a hash function where you could specify a date a date format, that there was an error in the a mixture of semicolons and colons. It should always be separated by semicolons, and so that one is fixed. This same functionality behind the scenes was used in this action called store data as text, which means that you can specify a date, a number of days or months or whatever you want to subtract or add, and this function too, due to that typo, was not working. So here I create a date time for today and I create a date time of yesterday. So if I run this workflow, not show log, if I run this workflow, start, you will notice, here you will see that it outputted date of today is, and then it says date of yesterday was that. And so you can calculate with dates that way. So functionality restored. The next one is hot folder create fields in catalog. Sometimes you need to be able to create a number of fields dynamically based on some external system bringing in information, and instead of having to manually do that, you could use a new action which was no longer available, and which is again, and this action is simply called create field in catalog. It can be a category field, it can be a record field, and it can be a table field in a field inside a table field of a record or a category. This workflow, what I did here is I actually created a parameter file in which I'm looking and in which I specify tab delimited what I want to do. And here I'm saying I want in the sample catalog that I want to add a category, a record, a string field, and this is the name of the field, and it needs to be editable, searchable, and sortable. This is just a plain text field, so no magic, you don't have drop downs or etc. This is just an external tab limited text file. This is not related to the instruction itself. This is just something I built for this workflow. So if I go to my sample catalog, and since I ran this before, it could be that the field already exists. So I'm going to check in my sample catalog if it does. So I'm going to go to my catalog settings here at the bottom, and I'm going to check if there was already a field called test from Peter, or was it just Peter? Let me check again in the workflow. I think it was called test from Peter. It was called test from Peter. So this sample catalog does not have it. We don't have a field called test from Peter, and we don't have a category called test from Peter. So I can execute the workflow, and the instruction itself returns you the GUID. So if a field is created, it just returns the GUID. So you can work with it. And if we have a look in the catalog, we can now see that we do have here a field called test from Peter, where sorting and contained search and editing is enabled, which was newly created, and a record field as well. So test from Peter, exactly the same thing. So this makes it very easy. If by accident you run this workflow twice, it will still return you the GUID of the field, but not of the new field, but of the field that it has already found. So there's no worries that this might be, sorry, show log, adding a field twice, etc. If the field already exists, it returns the GUID, but in the GUID it also says colon, record field already exists, to avoid that you add the same field several times. The action itself is very straightforward. Come on. If you look at it, you select in which catalog, which you have to have open before, and then you have a field for the options, and these are the options that you can set. You can, I'm just picking them up from the text file, of course, in this example. You can create a long date, a date only, a string, a table, sorry, integer, audio, and you can see all the typical, and here vocabulary field single and vocabulary field multiple, so you can have multi select or single select. You can specify the name. Oh, I forgot the type. You have to say if this is a record table field, a category table field. So if this is a record field or a category. So all that is in here. And then you can give it an output variable and the name, which should be unique. It is not mandatory, but if you specify a name that already exists, it finds it and it doesn't create a new field. So that's how this new action works. A little missing feature since Cumulus 9 was the fact that you could no longer process table item records from a table field in a category. Not very commonly used, but it was used. So you now have an open category table field and a closed table field, which is closest for any type of table field. So that is a new functionality that offers you the possibility of working on table fields in a category. And then the last one here is creating a PDF. So you can create a PDF from a selection of records. You can use print templates for that. So this workflow does a query. I'm just getting in the sample catalog some records, and I'm specifying the path to where the file needs to go. In this case, my folder, my RoboFlow folder. And I could have put it a parameter in the parameters. I just put it here in the workflow, but I here last item I use here here hard-coded the name of a print set, but if you're smart, you would do it something like this. You would say print template. Not mandatory. You can specify it hard coded there, but I prefer it this way. So I say Control-C, cancel. I'm not saving this. I'm picking this up because what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I'm going to create a new parameter and Control-X. I'm going to call it print template. That way I try to avoid having any hard-coded elements in my scripts. So this way I create this parameter here and it makes sure that it exists here. Important thing is that I have a new a fixed functionality in the store path as file. I'm creating the PDF that is about to be exported and making sure to delete it first. This functionality did not work prior to 10.2.3. There was a little bug. So now instead of so now it first deletes and then creates it again. So maybe you want to export a text file every week, and the text file always has the same name, but you want to start from scratch. Well, in one instruction, it deletes the old one and creates an empty new one. And so that's what it does here. And then the print template requires the name of the print template, the catalog, which must be open, and then something that you need to know, it needs the record IDs separated by a colon. So by comma. So how do I do that? I'm picking up the ID from each record and then storing it in a global variable. Each record is then processed, and so I'm concatenating this every time with a comma in between, and at the end I'm testing, is this the last record of this loop? Yes. At that point I know that this global IDSS variable contains all the IDs of the records, comma separated, and it will output them. So that is a functionality that is available for your creation of print templates. So if I run it, I say start. And I say show log, and you see that it has created this PDF and it shows me the contents of my indexes that it used. So here in my RoboFlow root folder, there should be a PDF called test PDF. There it is. And there is my print template with those records. So very easy. So thank you for joining this training movie. Showed a lot of new things and some fixed things. So enjoy. Talk to you or see you in the next training movie. Bye.